Hello.
Oh, hello. Good evening.
Good evening, bonsoir.
Yes, bonsoir. I think I can speak French now because I've watched so many French shows over this time. I'm literally like talking to all my French friends going, superb! Like I'm fluent and I'm not at all. I wish though. It's a shame when you have a language and it disappears because you don't use it. I'm sure that's the case, Lina, with you right now, is it? Would you get to practice?
No, I practice a lot.
Practice, okay, good.
My young Gabi, I was going to say good evening in Cebuano.
Yes, great. I love that one. That's a good one. We need to work on our greetings in the UK.
Isn't it?
Although they're good originally, aren't they? We just don't think about them anymore. Good day and so on. Hey, what does hey mean? It must be come from the Viking invasion. And does it mean life, hey? Like in Arabic, do you know? In the Scandinavian languages. Because we say it a lot now, don't we? Hey.
I don't know.
Good evening. We need to do a dance routine at some point. Maybe we'll just have a special Friday night. I'm so excited to hear your story again, Lina. I love it. I'll have a book one day. Or something else. A contemporary dance, capturing it forever.
No, I'd rather do it than a dance, for sure.
How's it going in East London? What's happening?
It's all right. Yeah, I moved. I live in a nicer place now.
Yeah, you settled. Comfortable.
Yeah, I like it. It's good. I liked my old place, but you know when you move, it's like...
Where are you? Where are you, Sarah? Sarah.
Hi everyone. I'm right now I'm in France.
That's what I thought. I didn't think you were on the same land mass as us. Well, bonsoir. That's how we start.
Bonsoir. Yes,
exactly. We speak every language. How's France? What's going on there? Masks, lockdown?
Yeah, COVID.
Yeah. COVID thing.
And yes, and we just went to pick up this little puppy.
Oh.
So that's why I'm here. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Is it yours or are you looking after?
Yeah, it's mine. No, it's mine.
Oh, congratulations on the new family member. That's so exciting. I feel like we're part of a holy moment.
Yeah, it actually, it's funny because it reminded me of the first days of bringing a baby back.
Yeah.
And I was just explaining to my boyfriend, this is why when we have a mom, we prepare frozen meals because then you end up eating unhealthy food because you're just sleep deprived and going from one thing to another. It was like, okay.
I think dogs are harder, to be honest, because you can't feed them. Well, you can, but you can't breastfeed them. But you can do co-sleeping and cuddling and wearing and all of that. It's all the same. They're mammals, right?
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, so that's the exciting news of I would say of the year for me.
Yeah. Excellent. What's the new baby's name? The dog's name?
He's called Scrooge McDog.
Good name. I like that. Very good name. Who's Alexandra? We'll wait a minute, shall we, to let everybody in? Is that somebody texting me? Let's have a quick look.
I have a problem with my laptop, so I'm on my iPad, so I might have to scroll to see people.
If we're doing baby news.
Oh look, another fur baby! Oh my god!
I've got 8 of them.
What?
Yeah, babes. Honestly, it's mental. It's mental.
Oh my god, I'm so jealous.
This is on top of having to have a real life as well. Look, it's just like I can't even begin to tell you. It's like the bumbliest little world of babies. There's millions of them.
Look everywhere.
Oh, so there we go.
Were you cat doula?
Yes, I was cat. I was a terrible doula, Nicola.
What happened?
I terrible, Donna. Well, because she started to have them behind the sofa, and the bottom of the sofa's completely collapsed because it's my mother-in-law's old sofa. And I was like, I'm fine. All I'm going to do is watch from a distance. I don't need to get involved. But I was like, I can't see. So I was like, I didn't need to see. I know I didn't need to see, but I wanted to see.
No, of course you did.
So I moved the sofa a tiny bit, which just freaked her out. So then she ran and hid under the cupboard to teach me a lesson. And then, yeah, I think that was just like, okay, stop now. She had it nailed. But I had to see.
It's so hard though. It's very fascinating, isn't it?
I know, I so wanted to do it. I was going to be the perfect doula, and I was not at all. I didn't quite do what happened when my kittens were born. But,
well, now you know how hard it is.
Exactly. Really good training.
There you go.
Really good training. But all 8 are fine, thriving days.
Fantastic. How cute. Hannah's got something she wrote once because she came in from a birth in the middle of the night and just got in bed in her clothes, and the cat got on top of her and started giving birth. She's literally texting me going, it's disgusting. Like at first it was like, so beautiful, all the oxytocin, we're so amazing, we're all one. And then she was really grossed out because it was right here. But wonderful, really wonderful.
That and the all eating all the sort of sinewy placenta bits on your chest after an exhausting evening is probably not what you need.
She's going to be like 17 years old here for her whole life.
Yeah.
All that fluid and goo.
I dread to think what's under my cupboard. I haven't been under there since it happened.
I should probably go back for a little snack, I reckon, find her cats. Lina, why don't we just begin and I'll secretly let everybody in? What do you reckon?
Sure.
I mean, we just want to hear it all, but just, you know, however you want, starting wherever you want.
Oh gosh. You'll have to like feel free to stop and ask me questions and stuff.
Okay, we will. So like we'll raise our hand, right? That's a good deal.
Sure.
Okay, it began many.
I was trying to like get
I was just about to do many generations ago in Stirling, in Clan Duncan, obviously. Do you know much about Clan Duncan? I don't.
No, I need to get more learning. I have looked into my ancestry and stuff. It does say I'm I think 81% Scottish, 71%. I did 2 different ones and one was different. One said Scandinavian and one said Scottish, but it's the journey, isn't it?
It is. It's exactly the same thing, really, isn't it? Let's face it. Go far enough north. When I was up really far north, it's like being in Denmark. Everybody's accents and there's like pickled fish in the fridge and
Seeing as you've started there, I might start there just to say that I was born in Stirling, in Scotland, and I was a footling breech, vaginal birth. The doctor didn't know what to do, and no one knew I was breech. And probably, I mean, on reflection, I was going to say this at the end, so maybe I'll say that bit at the end. Anyway, I was born by forceps, quite a traumatic birth. And that's probably why I ended up, for sure, being a birth keeper. But I didn't know that until quite a long way into my journey. So yeah, the accidental midwife, because it really wasn't a plan. I would say it was destined but not desired. It was circumstantial and situational. I ended up in the US. I was training I was doing a nanny. I wanted to be a nurse, actually. So when I was 16, I failed all my exams because I grew up in a family that was not very conditional to learning anything or studying anything. And I failed all my exams and didn't do nursing because I just got 1. I passed French, actually, but I can't remember how to speak French. And yes, I went into like care work and nanny work and worked with children for quite a few years. And then I ended up nannying in Canada when I was 26. I think I just wanted to get out of the UK, to be honest, and just see a bit of the world. And then I ended up visiting a place in the border of Mexico, which was El Paso. And I spent a week there. And we just went across the border a few times with people that were working in that community. And I went along, and it was with a bunch of young people. And I went along and just kind of fell in love with these people. And I was like, what is going on? I did not come here to fall in love with this place. And so I left. I was really heartbroken. Like, I am quite a feely person, as most of you know that know me, and quite sensitive. So I left kind of heartbroken, thinking, why have I fallen in love with these people? That was not expected. And I ended up back in that city about a year later on a RV bus with a friend of mine who had 9 kids, and I was on their RV doing a little travel around the States in their summer holidays. They had 9 kids, and I was kind of like friends with the older kids and friends with the parents. So they were like, come with us if you like, in our RV. And we stopped in that town, and the people remembered me and said, have you come for the school? And I was like, no, I'm going to go back to Canada and snowboard. And after about 10 people asked me, I was like, okay, maybe there's something in this. So I went to talk to the woman who was running the school. It was a primary healthcare school and a midwifery school. So I went to speak to her and basically said, hi, Anita. I said, oh, by the way, Esther's in the car. Esther's from Neighborhood Doulas. She's sitting in the car, taxi gun her. That's why she hasn't got a screen on. She's got a phone listening. And yeah, so I basically said I'm not very good at studying and tried to like make her turn me away. And she said, are you someone that will throw your whole heart into this if I give you a place 2 days before the school starts? So I said, yeah, I would. That's the kind of person I am, all or nothing. So she said, okay, then you're in. And so I joined the school. My friends left in their RV, and I had this tiny little suitcase. And I thought I'd go for 3 months, like a primary healthcare school, to learn about really simple techniques for, what to do if your kid has diarrhea and you're nowhere near a doctor, what are the signs of malaria, all kinds of stuff like that. So yeah, I did that school and really enjoyed it, studying, and we did like really interesting, like fun stuff with the local people in Juarez. And then no one wanted me in their car because I had blue hair. And this was back in 97. And yeah, the police would always stop me and wanted to like search the car because I looked a bit dodgy, I guess. So yeah, that was always fun. And then at the end of the school, people were saying, why don't you do midwifery? And I was like, no, that's not for me. But then the school was so good and the teacher was so good that I decided that maybe it might be for me. So I went back to the woman who ran the school and said, listen, I think I might want to be a midwife, but I don't know. And I also said, I've failed school, don't know if I'll get the grades, la, la, la. And but I had saved up some money from my work in the UK. So she said, you can take it a semester at a time and see how you go on. So I started the study, and it was really intense. It was a direct entry midwifery in the States under the New Mexico School of Midwifery. And we studied really hard on all the, what do you call it? The educational stuff, the books. So we did a pretty much like a couple of days lectures a week. And then we did every Wednesday, we would go to Juarez and go to this little town and do like community work with a perinatal doctor who lived in El Paso and worked in Juarez. So he was like the boss, and he was Mexican living in El Paso. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it was really interesting way to learn. I'm not sure you couldn't do it now because obviously Juarez wasn't a very safe place then, but it's a less safe place now. Mm-hmm. And it's probably not very, it wasn't culturally insensitive, but I don't know, questionable really, mostly white bunch of people going across the border. And it was a very respectable community, the way we worked together, we used to eat together. It was basically street people that would come for antenatal care because they weren't accessing any care. So they would come to us, and we would like do drama in Spanish about primary healthcare things, which was quite interesting and fun. And they would get an antenatal hands-on midwifery, like measuring baby, where's baby's position, and then food and questions, and that was it really. It was kind of a place for them to come and have a safe place and have a bit of food, and it was really fun. Like, it was wild, you know. Kids, I used to get lice every 5 minutes because the kids were always jumping all over me, and then I would get head lice all the time. And I think
everyone starts itching.
yeah, seriously. If I can, I'll find a photo. I was going to try and get some stuff together, but I did not have any time this week. Let me see if I have it.
Busy woman.
Oh, there we go. She's there, Carolina. So this is my little buddy, Carolina, and I had kind of greenish hair there. And because my full name is Carolina and she was Carolina, so we were buddies. And she had about 5 siblings. And yeah, that was always fun to see those kids. So yeah, we did the study like that. And then after 2 years, so it was a 3-year course, but we crammed it into 2 years. So that meant that we had more lectures, more studies, more projects. We basically worked really, really hard on our studies. And then the condition to go to do the practical was to work in the clinics that were already set up in the Philippines. So there was, Vicky had already set up a clinic in the Philippines, and our school fees paid the salaries of the Filipino midwives that were running the clinics. So it wasn't completely unethical, but how I found out since, there were some things that were not good at all about the way it was run. And the more I find out about just how colonized all the education is, and how we've forgotten so much, and we don't get taught, people don't get taught in midwifery school or any medical school about the granny midwives. And especially as I lived in America and trained with Americans, I think like that's something that I really like reflecting now. That's why I love Jenny Joseph's work so much, not just because Jenny's so awesome, but because, like, you know, it's so important to recognize the granny midwives in the States, and that's where I trained. And also how much midwifery education and all medical education needs to be continually addressed about just how, you know, the need for decolonizing it all. But yeah, so I was in the Philippines, and I was in a previously colonized country, and it was quite I don't think I really processed what I was doing until I got there. And I was like, what am I doing in the Philippines? Like, you know, when you just, I don't know, I didn't really think very much about where I was going and why. It was just like, this is where I need to be. This is where the course is happening. This is where I'm going. So I got there and I was like, oh my God, I'm in the Philippines. This is really bizarre. And we lived in a place. So we set up a new clinic in the Philippines in Cebu, which is a small, tiny island south of Manila, south of like the capital. And the national language was Tagalog. And we spoke Visayan and Cebuano, which is kind of the southern islands languages, which is quite interesting because some of the islands have the same word for different words. So you could be like, asking for a scrunchie, and it means you're asking for witchcraft in a different language. So it's quite interesting. Different island. So yeah, they set up a clinic in a old house. It was just a big old house in this place called Larega, which is it still is like it's a small, really built up place. It's changed a lot. I went back to see them about 3 years ago. But this clinic was basically in a place where the taxi drivers wouldn't even drive in there and drop us off. And we were living in there as well as working in there. But they wouldn't drop us off because they were scared, because it was loads of drug dealers and violence and crime. And there was like a place called, there was a slaughterhouse there, which I won't talk too much about, but you can use your imagination. I don't know if there's any vegans here, so I won't go into all of that. But it was not a nice place. And there was a very, I guess that was the community they were the people accessing the clinic for free. And the reason they set up there was because these people were not really accessing care. So they were at risk of dying, really, the mums and the babies. And they did have a lot of deaths because people wouldn't access the government hospitals, because the government hospitals were so scary, like 3 women to a bed in labor, or more than 1 woman in one kind of area, surfaces, and then in labor they were literally sharing beds as well. And then they would give birth in really dehumanized circumstances. And then in the postnatal ward, they would be on a bed sideways. So 3 heads on the bed and 3 feet on the stools. And so there would be like a baby, a mum, a baby, mum, baby, mum. And if sadly, quite often, if a baby was stillborn or died or something, then there wouldn't be a baby there, but the mum would still be there. So it was just horrendous to have like these kind of situations. So they would avoid it because they had to pay for their care. So even in the government hospital, they would have to pay, and it was too much money for them. Like they would be selling their TV, selling stuff that they couldn't sell really, just to buy a whole bunch of IVs. Like whenever they got in the hospital, they would have a list of things to buy. And until you had those things, they wouldn't admit you. So even if they rock up there in a medical emergency, the bare minimum they need is like IVs, cannulas, all the stuff. So they run around, all the neighbors, family run around buying the stuff, and then they all get through a like a conveyor belt care, and so there was no choice, there was no respect, there was no dignity. There was a lot of money spent for maybe unnecessary medicines and procedures. So a lot of the people were scared basically to go there. So we set up a clinic which was really simple, had like wooden beds and mattresses and curtains to separate them. So they had a little private space, and very comfy, but super cheap. I mean, very, very simple, basic. We had oxygen tanks because back in the day we were giving oxygen that was the only thing we had. If the heartbeat was dropping, then we could give the birthing person oxygen, but we couldn't, and babies, although that's probably considered not so such a thing now with home birth midwives and that kind of culture. But yeah, we had oxygen, and we had like simple medicines for bleeding, and we had like blood pressure cuffs, Dopplers, fetoscopes, and like that was it basically. No doctors. And Von Two's cups, which we were all trained to use, because quite often they would refuse to go to hospital, and so we would tell them, this is circumstance, we would advise to go to hospital now because baby's heartbeat is like this, or this has happened, and blah blah blah. And then they would refuse, sometimes, usually, most often refuse to go. So we would either have to they would either just go home and maybe die of obstructive labor or whatever, or they would stay with us and we would try to manage the complications. So we got quite overtrained in a way, because we were trained how to do things that we shouldn't be doing as midwives, really, like that kind of thing. Not forceps, but the ventouse thing. Oh, horrible. And yeah, and often we would take people to hospital if they wanted to go. Sometimes we would take them, but then it was very traumatic because it was just horrific to see, to be a witness, to bear witness to what they were doing was, I don't know, there was too much trauma. And so you witness that and it's just like, oh, it stays with you, you know, it's horrible, the things that happen to them. And just very dehumanizing to see how people were treated when they weren't, yeah, no one deserves to be treated like that. I've never seen anything so bad, worse than India. And so that's really why we had the center there. So yeah, I worked there and then I switched islands a bit. So we had another clinic in another island, which had been there for quite a long time. And on that, because our clinic wasn't busy in the beginning, so they sent me to the other clinic and said, go over there and do a few months. So I went over there and we were living on the first floor of that one. So the people would ring the bell, emergency, and you know, a lot of the time they would just come in pushing their babies out in the taxi, in the rickshaw, in the jeepney, which is like an open truck thing. And you know, didn't have to do much apart from catch a baby, literally, when it was like that. I remember once a mum came and she was pushing in the taxi and I was the first one out there, and the midwife supervising me, Filipino midwife, was like, put her legs up. So I like was in the front seat asking her to raise her legs, and I was holding her legs, and then the midwife caught the baby. It was breech and the granny was trying to push the baby back in because it was coming out bum first. So the grandma was trying to say, no, the baby's the wrong way around, pushing it back up. And we were like, no, let the baby come out. The Filipino midwife was like, it's okay, let the baby out. And then, yeah, so the baby was born. But those kind of circumstances it was quite often like that. So the adrenaline was like, a lot, because we lived on the premises. So quite often the bell would ring in the night, just like that, you know, people shouting. So I didn't sleep much for those months. And because I didn't sleep, I was very, and I was good at emergencies. I could start IVs really quickly and do, like, I wake up quick because I wasn't really sleeping. So they would call me. So the emergency buzzer went in the birth rooms. I was always like down. We used to sleep in our scrubs or sleep in our clothes and just run down to the thing. So it was fun, but it was a bit wild and crazy and probably not good in the long run for your anything, mental health or physical health. But it was really beautiful to be like, it was very community, very dignified care. Like I've just found one of these. So we were to do our little antenatals on these kind of forms, and I think I had done all these people, this woman, so she had 11 pregnancies, and that was her, she had one miscarriage, and so I think 9 of her children were there, and I caught her 10th baby. So it was really fun to like meet the kids, and sometimes they would bring their kids along, and because we were just a simple setup, you know, they could bring their kids in and the kids would just sit on the bed, and we would just really, sometimes we would do 40 antenatals, 45 antenatals in a day. So it wasn't very in-depth, as you can imagine. It's literally like, how are you? Have you got any concerns? Let me measure your baby. Is your baby moving a lot? You know, very simple, very basic. And then whilst they were waiting, actually, one of the Filipinos would do childbirth classes for them while they were waiting. So they weren't bored and they were getting some good childbirth education and some singing, because I think Michel Audant was one of the people featured in our midwifery education, and I don't know if you guys have ever seen him talking about singing in pregnancy, but he really loves to do that. and he launches into these French songs back in the
From
day.
like 500 years ago. Yeah, they're wonderful.
Because most of the people were Catholic in the Philippines, so the Filipinos would lead them in some singing in soprano or Visayan, mostly some English. So it was really lovely to see them like doing some actions and singing and laughing, and really good for them, good for their breathing, good for like community, good for a bit of joy, because a lot of them lived in poverty, really, not getting enough food and all kinds of stuff in the background, which we came to find out later, really. A lot of substance abuse and violence and all kinds of stuff in the community that maybe they wouldn't have told us. I don't think we really knew to ask back then. But if they disclosed stuff to us, we would try to support them. We had like a community team that would do visits, sometimes drop food at their houses and stuff like that. And yeah, and they used to put you said they would write our names. So someone would screen, someone was sitting there screening everybody as they walked in, taking their blood pressure. And if they were over 35, had more than 5 children, or were under 18, the boss used to write my name on there, refer to Lina. And then when they would come to me, and then I would choose if I could take them as a continuity, because we were working on shifts. So in that clinic, we were doing, what do you call it? A day shift, and then a 24-hour shift, and then 24 hours off. So we would do like 8 till 5, and then 8 till 8, and then off 24 hours. But I used to get quite a lot of continuities, because, you know, when you meet them and they were so sweet, I'll be like, oh, how could I not? And I had no other life, right? So what am I going to do? So I used to take on a lot of continuities, and then mostly they would come just as I was finishing my 24-hour shift. They would come in labor and they'd be like, Didi. And then you would like be up, or, you know, they used to send me to bed, and the day shift people would be like, Lina, go and rest. I'll call you when she's more active. So it was quite nice kind of community working like that. So that went on. I have all these things. I have like I used to be a bit obsessive. I would take a footprint of all the babies, which probably isn't good now. I wouldn't do that with that kind of ink, but wasn't very conscious back in the day. And yeah, like I literally used to document every birth. I have about 6 of these books. And that's how I learned midwifery, which probably, of course, isn't great that I was learning in a country, in a brown-bodied majority country. It wasn't great as a white person learning there. And they have stopped that now. Like the people that run my school now train people, but they still oversee those clinics, but they disallow any foreigners from working hands-on. It's all run by Filipinos now, which is much better. And yeah, there were some people that were very special, like this Gina. She was very sweet. And I think she told me her husband, it was quite violent. She left the one husband, was one partner, and then her next partner wasn't great either. And she just looked very thin all the time and not having much food. And so the midwife sometimes would be like, oh, who needs food? They would have some bags of food donated sometimes. So we used to go out and sit in she lived over the water. So her house was on stilts, and we used to sit there. And it was one of those moments, you know, when you think about, can't think of the word. I don't know, you know, where you're in a place, but you're kind of like, you feel like you're present, super present, but then you're not present at all, just like observing. So I used to sit there, and her kids would come and jump on you, and then they would go and pee in the corner, because they had like a little hole in the floor that would go down to the water. So they would just go and pee in their little, you know, ocean toilet and then come and jump on you and be really friendly. And then she would sit, and I got her a guitar for her birthday. She turned 30. So I got her guitar, and she used to play guitar and just be very simple. Anyway, she came very late. She went 42 plus 1 for her birth. And then she had a very long birth, like very long. And she was pushing with, I don't know how much detail you guys don't mind. When she was pushing, I've never quite seen this, but she was pushing and like her cervix was coming out because it wasn't opening, because it was so damaged from her malnourished state. And so it felt very interventive. I literally had to help hold up her body while she birthed her baby. So I wasn't doing anything too intrusive, but it probably was quite intrusive. I just let to, otherwise she might have prolapsed. It was really like, anyway, she birthed her baby beautifully, and then she just fell asleep. And I just did all her postnatal care while she was sleeping. And the baby was on her boob. And I just like checked her fundus, and then she woke up, fed her. She stayed a couple of days just so we could feed her a few meals. And then it was really awful because I left and went back to the other island. And then I got a phone call one day to say that she'd passed away. And I was like, what happened? And she had TB in her stump, in her bones. And because there was no signs and symptoms of coughing, you know, the normal signs of TB weren't there. So she had really just been in a lot of pain, and that's probably why she didn't gain a lot of weight. And she sadly passed away. So I went for the funeral. I flew over, and the husband tried to give me the baby, and I was like, I can't take your baby. Not appropriate at that time in my life. And that was her house. So kind of that was the ocean gone out, and that's how they lived in the houses above there. But there was also a community called the Bajau community, that were a Muslim community that were quite segregated from them. They segregated themselves because they were very private, because they were also very at risk. They didn't trust anyone because they had been harmed, I think, by the community. And so they didn't mix with anyone because they didn't want to be unsafe. So they literally used to, you know, live, and they had doctors, kind of traditional doctors, traditional people that would help them to birth and stuff. But sometimes they would come to us if something was very wrong. They would come to us because if they didn't know what to do. But they used to refuse to go to hospital because it was too traumatic for them. But they were amazing. We used to visit them at home sometimes, and they would dive and catch their fish with their hands, and live a lot of you know, they lived all over the water in this community. So there was different communities that we got to know, and we met them. And I went to a lot of funerals, probably more funerals than weddings, because I was out of England for 20 years, so I missed all my friends' weddings. But I went to a lot of funerals of babies and children, because the life was like that. That was life. And that they used to come a lot to us, because I think, you know, like birth keepers, we also do a lot the other side, isn't it? So seeing people out and seeing people in, and if people came to us knowing that they were going to have a stillbirth, or if we found that out ourselves, and we would talk to them and give them a choice to stay with us in the clinic or go to the hospital, because if they stayed with us, they could do what they wanted. They could have rituals, they could do their own, they could have family, they could stay for a couple of days so that we could look after them and feed them. We could do a funeral for them, because most of them were Catholics, and the community that we worked with had all those kind of things. So quite often we would do our own funerals for them in the little places. And yeah, it was intense, man. And quite often we were just going from one thing to another. So not much recovery, not much recovery time, and not much mentoring in place. So it was quite hard to layer, you know, build up And I think because I'm quite an empathetic person and, you know, giving person maybe naturally, I kind of reached a bit of like the end of myself, really. So I went to get some help in Hong Kong to just get some rest. And then I thought I was going back to India. I'm in Philippines, but I ended up going on to India. I spent 5 years in Hong Kong. I went for 3 months and I spent 5 years there.
We have to watch you on holiday, don't we? Hope you being careful.
That was really weird. Yeah, it was completely unplanned. And I think even the midwifery, like it brought up a lot because I thought I'm kind of that person that just lives my life. So I was living my life, being a student, being a midwife, and then things came up. And I remembered things about my childhood and stuff that I completely suppressed. And so that all came to, like, I had to go out for a while and just get some recovery and some reflection. And it was heartbreaking because I thought I'd given up midwifery and all my life. Like I thought that was the end of being a midwife. And so the grief was full on. The night before I went to Hong Kong, I thought I was going to die of grief pain. And then, yeah, so I was in Hong Kong for 5 years, also working in community with actually people with substance abuse. I actually went to a house for heroin addicts because I had an eating disorder, because that was how I processed my pain, was old things, bulimia back in my life, which was really rubbish when you're living with people who don't have food. So it was good to leave and to go sort my life out. And then, yeah, so then we were helping people with substance abuse, and similar, very similar, to be out with people rubbing their back. I was working in a women's house. So literally telling them, you can do this, you've chosen to do this, you're going to make it through the other side. It was very much like being with someone in labour, I can't even tell you. Apart from the baby wasn't there, which is such a beautiful reward. And so I did that for a while, and then I worked with Nepalese people in Hong Kong because they were treated so badly, and because Hong Kong actually means Zhonggok is Chinese for Hong Kong. So Zhong is center and Gok is world. So the belief is kind of that they are the center of the world, and other people, especially people that are dark skinned, would be treated badly, very badly in Hong Kong, because there are only Chinese people. There's mostly only Chinese people there, but there was 40,000 Nepalese and 40,000 Pakistani people, and very few people from countries in Africa doing business and trading and clothing, and that was a whole thing in one Chim Sa Choi, this very small place. But most of the communities outside of that kind of very that was a kind of the posh part of the Hong Kong, whereas all the other parts of Hong Kong was mostly Chinese only. So the addicts that I was working with were Nepalese, and they were treated so badly. Their wages were less for doing the same work. They were sent up higher on the scaffolding than Chinese people. And when they came into our houses, we had to really sit down with the people and just be like, you know, everyone's welcome here. If you're going to get up and leave the table when a Nepalese guy sits down, then you have to leave, because this place is for everybody and everyone's welcome here, and we don't accept people treating people like that. So we worked with a lot of Nepalese families, and sometimes I would work with the babies. If the mums, I worked with men and women, but when I worked with the women, I would sometimes work with women who had had their babies put in care whilst they had come into the, you know, the treatment center. So then I would visit their little babies in the, you know, the place for babies, and or accompany the mums in there. So that was quite interesting to see that side of things. And then I got an opportunity to go and set up a business in India. We weren't quite sure what on earth we were doing. And basically we spent about a year learning about Indian culture. We learned a bit of alphabet, language, looked at many Bollywood movies just to try and understand culture, looked at some history, and worked with some Indian people to prepare for going for about a year. And then when we got there, we explored the city. We went to Mumbai, we explored for 3 months, going up and down on the trains with the open doors and walking our feet around this big city, because every neighborhood was very different. It's a bit like London, isn't it? I mean, Southeast London is very different to Northwest London, which is really different to East London. So it's the same in Mumbai, very, very different communities. Some were mostly Muslims and some mostly Hindus, more Hindus than Muslims in the country, and more Hindus in Mumbai. And the government changed when I was there, and they were basically pro-Hindus. But yeah, I stuck out like a sore thumb, as you can imagine. And we lived in a very urban place. We chose to live in this place, which there was no other foreigners living there. So me and the Chinese guys and the other foreigners working with us really stood out. And we used to go on the local train and we learnt Hindi. So we went to learn Hindi up in the mountains, and that took a few months. We were going for a couple of months, but then the guys got stuck with their visas and me and Kathy were stuck on our own, and we were like, what to do? Stay in this beautiful place with the view of the Himalayas and learn more Hindi, or go back to Mumbai on our own with 7 people's luggage? We're like, no, let's stay here. So we stayed there, and I assisted somebody. My Hindi teacher said to me, "Aapka kaam kya hai?" which means, what is your work? I mean, the way she said it was like that. So I said, "Main dai hoon," which means I'm a midwife. And she's like, "Meri beti aa rahi hai, wo ped se hai." So she said, "My daughter's coming, she's pregnant. You must meet her." So I went to meet them and really got on with her daughter, and she was really sweet. And because the culture was that if you're having your first baby, you go home to your mother. So that's why I was like, why is it in Bollywood movies that they're always sobbing? And why is it that everyone's photos of their weddings is like so solemn and crying their face off? And it was because back in the day with the caste system and all of those things, they really do say goodbye to their parents, and that's it. You know, you now belong to your husband's family, and you may never see your mother again. But the culture is when you have a baby, you go back to your mother. So she had come back to her mother, come back to her hometown, hadn't been there for years, felt really awkward, pregnant, heavily pregnant. So we used to go for walks. Anyway, we accompanied her for her birth, which was very long, and we walked around in many circles. So the mother said, we have now married, we're all married now, because Hindu culture is you walk around 7 circles. She said, we've done more than 7 circles, so now we are all married and you have to become part of our family. So after the birth, they fed us every night for about 2 months, I think. And if we didn't go, they were very offended. So they were very high class Hindus. And yeah, we were overfed a lot of yummy home cooked food. And they said to us, why don't you do this as a business? Because, you know, my daughter lives in Calcutta. She came here. It's isolating for people when they're, you know, they're split off from their families. And nuclear families is much more common now in India. They don't so much live in their generations unless they've all decided to stay in the same place. So then we set up a business, and whoops, wow, time is going fast. And then we basically lived and worked in Kurla. So we lived in Kurla, which was a really, like, this is the platform. Let's see if I can find it. This is the platform. So there was a train station, and this is platform 8, and that's just a mum sitting there. And people lived on that platform, and we had to walk past that platform to get on a train. And then, yeah, so there's another picture here. Gosh, my book's falling apart. Let me see. There's good. So you can see like the amount of rubbish where they were living. Like that's how they were just living. Some of them were born there. Some of them and born there, grew up there, and had their babies there, living, birthing under the stars like that. So they obviously they noticed us. So they were like, "Come here." Drink tea, and we would just sit and chat with them and have tea, and then they started telling us about their lives. And then if they were pregnant, I would ask them, where do you go for your care? So then they either didn't have care or they went to the government hospital, and so then they would just tell us stuff. And so we went to the government hospitals, and I asked if I could go and observe, and they said you can observe for £5 for a month pass, which is probably white privilege, just going into an Indian hospital and asking to observe, which I was very much aware of, like in the Philippines too. It's very much, Americans are very, like in the Philippines, it's very esteemed to have an American partner. To leave Philippines and go to America or go to England is like, you've made it. And a lot of people will leave. A lot of the elder sibling will leave and work their whole life and send money back for their family their whole life and be very selfless, like just literally provide for their whole family. Or if they even have children, they would leave the children with their parents and off they go and work in Saudi. I mean, you know this, right? But it was really quite a hard thing to see and to witness, and to actually have the Filipinos ask us, do you have people where we can go and, you know, marry or work for? And it just was like, wow, it really, the privilege of having a British passport as well is such a thing, because my Nepalese friends and Filipino friends cannot come to a lot of countries and they can't get visas or anything, can't come here. But yeah, so living and working like that was really really a blessed, like so much fun. The people were so much fun, drinking tea together. Everything happens over a cup of tea. And but really like eye-opening to see how people lived. And so I would go to work on the train and meet these families, and some of them would treat me like a servant because they were so wealthy, Indian families. And it was like, if you're working for them in any capacity and being paid, then you're literally like, you go in, you get told to sit here and wait, and then someone in a white suit, like white uniform, will come and bring you to the people. Not most people were not like that, but it was really interesting to see how you know, to be treated like your how do you call that, like one of their servants. They call them servants. To be treated like a servant.
It's a dirty job, midwife, right? In India, is it not? In the higher,
yeah, it's really I mean, it's now all outsourced. So everyone there's obstetricians, all these people were seeing obstetricians, and then they would see us because they wanted more midwifery model of care. So people came to learn about midwifery model of care, and when we started offering it, it got quite popular. But then it got unpopular with the doctors because people would change their care, which meant some doctors were losing money to come and work with me and the doctors that I work with. So it was complicated. And meanwhile, these people were literally giving birth under the stars, and we were forming friendships with them. And it was a really fine balance to be like, you know, because I was always going home to my home, and I was very aware that we had a nice little flat. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't very amazing, but let me see. I'm trying to get this picture. Can't show you. Oh yeah, there. So sometimes they would ask me to check their babies and stuff like that. So it was just really nice to be. Oh, I can't find the photo of that one. There was a family that the grandmother was 41 when I left, I think, and she had 9 children, and I had been at the births of 4 of her oldest children. So her oldest child had 4 kids, and I'd been in the government hospital with her, and then the second one had 3, and I'd been with her too, and then the third was a son, or the fourth one was a son, and his partner had two. And they had like, she had like, I can't remember how many grandchildren she had when I left, and she was only 41. I was like, wow. But they were a Muslim family, and the treatment in the hospitals was so bad. Like I was there, I used to have to pay £5 to get a pass. So when they were due, I would go in and get all these signatures. It's very bureaucratic from the British, and get this pass, and then I'll be allowed in to go with them. And yeah, just really bad practice, like not listening to the babies. Yeah, I love all my little scrapbooks. Records of everything.
Me too. I love them.
And yeah, it was just it was brutal again to see how people got treated. And so it was a fine balance, because I was very aware that I was able to enter places because I was white and because I was a foreigner. But then they would ask me to come because they were like, Didi, they treat me better if you're there. But what I saw when I was with them was horrendous. So I was like, if they're treating you better now with me here, I can't imagine what it was like when I'm not here. So that was all quite shocking. And there was stuff like malaria, you know, this little one, she was really in a lot of domestic violence, that the one in the blue. And her little boy got malaria when he was a newborn, living there. She gave birth there in a hut on her own, just a little tent. And she called me and said, Didi, I think baby's got malaria. So they went into hospital, got admitted. And then they wouldn't let her out of hospital because they had given blood to the baby. So then her husband was alcoholic. He couldn't give blood. She couldn't give blood because she'd just given birth. So one of us gave blood, because you had to give blood back to the hospital before they released you, or pay 1,000 rupees. So we were like, we may as well give blood rather than give them money. But that the system's just very crazy. And then we got to meet, like, really, we networked, we sourced people that believed in birth. That was a journey. We sourced doctors in the private doctor world, because we had expats, maybe about 70% expats when I first went, and 30% Indians were seeking our services. And by the time we left, it was 30% expats and 70% Indians were seeking our services. And we were networking with doctors that wanted to provide natural birth, and they realized what people wanted. They were smart. A lot of them weren't smart. They were just like carrying on with their obstetric, really intervening, and really, really high cesarean rates. I once met a woman who said her cesarean rate was 99.5%. So that was a lot. I just found a picture of the grandma and all the children. So that's some of the, I can't see which one the granny is. I think the granny's in the front. No, she's somewhere in there. Anyway, that's like all some of the grandchildren. But some of them still, now they're on Facebook and stuff, right? So now Facebook, Instagram, they've found me, and they were messaging, especially in COVID, to say like how bad it was, which was quite shocking.
It was really bad, wasn't it? Really bad. Really bad.
But basically we did home birth. We started doing home birth. We used to do like really, so that's my colleague Ning from the Philippines in the blue salwar kameez, and that's one of our clients. I was the midwife for that little girl, and then we were the little girl that was, I was her midwife. She was at the birth of her little brother, and that was a home birth. That was just after the baby came, and then the mum was in the kitchen. The mum's mum was in the kitchen, and she was banging the pot. And that's what they do when they announce the birth in her culture of her family tradition, and that in her specific culture was to bang the pots to announce the arrival of the baby. And I think, oh gosh, it's falling apart. But it was very special to be at quite a few siblings' births and just to see that midwifery was growing. People were starting to become aware that they could not go with the system and to sensitively not go with their family's pressure, because there was a lot of pressure from family to generations, so that people would say, you know, we've always birthed in this hospital, this is our doctor, this is our family doctor, you must birth here. So we had people, you know, pretending to go along with their family, and then they would go off and have a water birth with us somewhere, and then they would announce the birth and just say, come to this hospital, we're not in that hospital, we're here. But seeing the joy and the empowerment of, you know, being that empowered birthing person and feeling all the hormones and just the non-intervention, even the family were like, oh wow, we're so proud of you and really happy. So it was really interesting to see a lot of change. We worked with a lot of Indian doctors and met some amazing people. Like there was a woman called Dr. Mita Fernandez who had set up the first milk bank in Mumbai in a government hospital back in like the 80s or something. Incredible woman. And I met her and she just said, if you're ever, because she knew that we were helping the street people, and she said, if you're ever in Sion Hospital and you need help, just call me any time of the day or night. She was like 60 something. Just call me, because she used to be the dean of that hospital. So she said, I'll sort it out for you. So we did. We like literally used to call her for emergencies and stuff, and she would use her power to help the people, because she was like, you're really helping the people that need help on the street, so I'll help you to help them, which was really good. And then I left because it got to a point where my friends had set up some amazing birth centers in southern India. So Vijaya is a really good friend of mine. She's hopefully going to come on here one day and you'll be blown away by her. And she's that's Vijaya, and she is amazing. She was a doula. I won't tell her story too much because she should tell her own story. But basically she's now running the birth center in Hyderabad called Healthy Mother, and it's called the Sanctum Birth Center on Instagram, and they are incredible. She's trained herself in the States and now she's trained herself in India and set up this birth center, running for many years now. And it got to the point in Mumbai where some of the jealous doctors were having clients leave them and come to me. And one time they sat me down and basically threatened me and said, you wait till something's gone wrong, like what you're doing here, you don't have a license to practice here, which is true. I didn't have a license to practice because I couldn't, because you had to be Indian to have a license to practice. But I wasn't illegal because I was working with the doctors, so I always found a way to do the work in a legit way that wasn't damaging to people. But it got to a point where I didn't want to risk the name of midwifery as a white British woman because of my decision to stay in India, because it was getting a bit like that. They wanted me in trouble. They wanted something bad to happen. And I was like, for one, I don't want to go to an Indian jail. I didn't want to go to Arthur Road jail. And for two, the more important one was I didn't want to do anything that would damage Priyanka and Vijaya's work, because they are doing amazing work. And so, yeah, felt like time to leave. So I left after 9 years in India and came back here after 20 years of being out. And so I'd written something down. Can't remember now. But basically, yeah, I think there. So all in Cebu, it was mostly working in that one area. Like we were working with people in absolute living in survival day to day, like no food and having food, but minimal, sometimes not having food. So I worked in that situation for 5 years. Then in India, I was working with very high class people and then people on the street. Like sometimes they would call me and just be like, did you come? And I would run down to the station with a stethoscope and a blood pressure cuff. And my friends would come because it was dark and a bit dodgy. And they would be like behind. And then, you know, sometimes babies were born on that platform and the local midwives might be there too. So I was always very respectful that they were the traditional midwives, but also that someone had called me too. So it's like, what do you want me to do? What can I do alongside there? And I met one of the midwives I stayed in touch with. And I went back after I left India and came back. I went back for a conference in India and I went back to see that midwife. And she is just incredible. She'd built like toilets because there was no toilets in the area and the people used to have to go in these wooded area. And in the night time, they used to walk into this grassy, dodgy area. And it was really dangerous for them to use that place as a toilet. And this woman networked with the government, got some public toilets erected. And then we sat with her, actually with Sister Morning Star, who hopefully is going to come here too one day. And we just sang and sat all cross-legged and all these kids came in and you could just see that this woman was such a community leader. Like they all respected her. People would pop their head around the curtain and ask her staff about their health. And you could just see that this midwife who learned to be a midwife from birthing goats was just so respected, and she was the pillar of that community, you know. And how the government has ostracized her from her work and made her scared to be a midwife now because of the institutionalization of birth, which happened when I was there. I saw it more and more, how they were paying these people, these women in the communities, they would pay them to bring people into the hospitals to be basically, well, there's children on the call, but yeah, treated badly in the hospital, very badly. And so these dyes are really getting extinct. And there's a lot of, you know, even people like training, there's a lot of British white midwives going to train with one specific hospital in India. Anyway, don't get me started. And there's not much respect for the traditional people, do you know what I mean? So it really used to upset a few of us that the traditional people are getting ousted and their generations, because that one learned by the goats, but some people got it passed down from their aunties and their grandmothers. And, you know, they went as children to births to learn in Rajasthan or whatever, you know, they learned how to be hands-on and they were experts in their craft and their skill, even though they were, like you said, Nicola, treated down like the worst of society because it's considered dirty job by incredible people. So it was just nice to go back and see her like thriving and to sit and listen to her and ask her stories. And I did quite a few births with her in really interesting circumstances. And yeah, and now I'm a doula and I love it. I thought I would come back here and be a midwife, and it was just so much hassle. I was going to have to train and get an access course and do maths GCSE. I did English GCSE and got an A star. Yay. Made me happy. But I failed maths by one point and I was like, oh no, I don't think I could do this. And everyone I spoke to, like doulas, took me a while to meet you, Nicola, isn't it? Long time.
It did, a few years. Yes.
Eventually I found my people, and and then yeah, basically everyone I spoke to said you'll hate it, because my midwifery that I learned was my hands and my heart and respectful care and skills, and I just thought I can't do that in this system. So it still is very frustrating, isn't it?
It
I
is.
think I should shut up now.
Oh no, you did a splendid job for someone that was like, I don't know what I'm gonna say, what's my story, where's all my bits of paper? That was amazing. And if you've ever doubted that angels walk among us, I think you've just been proven wrong. There's so many people like Lana, working away, burrowing away and dedicating their life to this work. Thank you so much. You've seen some harrowing sights. I know you have, and exhausted yourself. So maybe that's why you get to have a break being a doula in London for a bit. Although you're working really hard, right, with neighbourhood doulas. Does everybody know who they are? Maybe just say who they are and what they do for those that don't.
Lovely Kay is a neighbourhood doula, and Rosie.
Yeah, that's right. We're taking over, basically.
And Esther's here.
Hi, Esther. Nice to meet you.
So thank you for what you do to just like help us and guide us and pass people our way, because it's really so what we do, for people that don't know, is just Carolyn started it with Carolina, and they basically trained with Nicola, and they started, Carolina and Carolyn started serving people, but they very quickly found out that they would rather work with the local community. And Esther was there back in the beginning as well. Okay. Now she's come back to work with us. So they started doing breastfeeding support in St Mary's and just being doulas for people that couldn't afford it. And it was very small and local, and they were called Calendula doula or something. And then it grew, and I met Carolina in 2017. And then when I met her and I heard what they do, I was like, oh, please, can I join? Because it was very similar to all the work I've ever done. It's like you go and work for your private clients, and then you go and work for people that couldn't pay. And that's what I wanted to do in London. I didn't know there was such a thing. So when Carolina said that, I was like, oh, yes, please, sign me up. And then sadly, Carolina passed, and they asked me to help Carolyn. There's Carolina, Carolyn, Carolina. No,
Lina as well, and you as well in the mix. It's too much. I've got two Sophia Crawfords at the moment. It's too much for me.
Lina, can I interrupt? How do you do it then, Lina, with the neighbourhood doulas? Is it you subsidise the support for people who can't by charging your fees to private clients? Is that how it works?
Basically, we're funded. We're CIC, and we're funded by the lottery and Westway, and the doulas get paid or not. If they want to get paid, they get reimbursed. Not the full amount yet, because unfortunately we don't have enough funding to pay as much as we would like to. And then the people get a free service. So the midwives refer to us, mostly midwives or services like Hestia or so different organizations, and they refer people to us, and then we look at the referrals and then put it out there, and then we have a whole team of doulas that sign up to be the main doula or the backup, and we work in teams so that people can have a life as well. And so that, especially during COVID, it's been a nightmare, people sheltering and stuff like that. So there's always somebody to support that person. It doesn't have to be one person or nobody, because that's a bit hard to work like that.
Yeah. Amazing. I'm just blown away, honestly, listening to you. It's been humbling in the extreme, just listening to how the experiences you've had. If I was ever gonna need to have a baby in a bush, I'd want you there. Just like your experiences are incredible. Just you must have been through, I mean, you have been through so many things. It's a real privilege to listen to your story. You've learnt so much, and it's amazing you're sharing with us. So thank you.
Well, you know what? I used to rave about the NHS when I was there, because when you have nothing and there's no free system for people, the NHS just does sound like a dream. But now I'm working with the NHS, I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, but it's not the people in the NHS. It's the NHS is just this beast that's become unmanageable. The idea behind, I still believe in the idea behind this NHS. We need this NHS, but we just need to shake it up, right? It shouldn't be functioning and performing in the ways that it does. It's lost all community. It's lost all localism. It's too big. It's a monster that can't be brought back in. It's all, apart from those individuals within it who are fighting a system and who are, Nicola always says, making themselves sick, and they're going to end up with kidney failure and liver disease and horrible things that are just not their fault. But it's not the idea. We still need to protect what we have, but we have to make it good. We have to make it good again somehow. And if all the good people are on the outside, it does make me think sometimes, how do we do it? But rather that than some of the government hospitals you've been talking about, I suppose is what I'm saying.
Half our midwifery workforce was off for the last year locally
through illness.
Well, sheltering to begin with, and then illness. So half of them basically are so infirm that they had to shelter, right? Because there's so much disease. Sarah Nada has a question for you, I think, or some thoughts maybe.
Well, two things. First thing is it's great to see you, Lina. I was once paired up on a neighborhood doula at birth with this gorgeous woman. Already there, I was like, oh, when I grow up, I want to be a little bit of Lina, if I can. So it's great to hear the full story behind this wonderful woman. But and she did a stellar job, and she's like, oh yeah, I speak Hindi and I speak this. And I was like, what? And so it was just amazing. Anyways, that's the story behind my fascination and my, I don't know, fandom, if that's the word, with Lina. But the actual question is that very often, and that's something that comes and goes for me, is that, oh well, I should probably just go for midwifery school, because I just I'm sure that I learn some stuff so that I can just be a better doula and do the work better, and especially in terms of the institutionalization of birth and debunking that, and helping helping within the system to educate and assist mothers and support also the birth workers, the institutional birth workers, to see how they can improve their and how we can also learn from one another. So, but then you answered a bit, I guess. I know you said that you wouldn't want to actually, if it was to do it all over again right now, if you were 21 right now and able to go to midwifery school, would you do it again? Do you think that in the UK, would you rather do that than do the path that you've, your hands-on work, your hands-on learning?
No, I love my journey. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate the cultural learning, and I'm very grateful for it, and I think it's really it's fun to now be able to speak with people. Like there's people that come through neighborhood doulas that maybe only speak Cantonese or maybe only speak Urdu, so it's really good to be able to be their doula. If I was 21 now and doing it, I guess I might try and be a midwife now, but it would be hard to be in this system. It's scary to be a midwife. I don't know if I could ever do all that stuff properly, like UK midwifery, put like those scalp monitors on. Oh, I don't think I could do that.
Good, because a midwife shouldn't screw anything into an unborn baby's head. I'm so sure of that as a universal rule. I really am. It'll go out of fashion. Have you been in St. George's when anyone's had the one they glue on? It's called Stanley, Henry, something like that.
A man's name. No, I
Obviously,
haven't.
yeah. The bastard monitor, that's what they should call it. But they got one and they kind of use like wig glue and glue it on, and then it's like the new version of the scalp electrode, so it all feeds into the central computer. So you're sat, basically the doctor's sat at the desk and his obstetric nurses, midwives, are doing all his work for him. That's kind of how it's going to go, apparently. But they had them in St. George's, so I'm interested. One day we'll hear, won't we? But that's a good enough reason, even if there isn't another one.
Just makes you want to go back to singing in a waiting room, right? It's just that's
right, exactly.
Choose one or the other.
You sing your serenade, you'd really like it. The French provincial hospital sing song on a Monday.
Yeah, but that's the thing, right? Like my dad was a gynae, so I grew up in Algerian hospitals where there was a lot of traditional stuff being done, but a lot of French education as to how to treat women and babies and interventions and a layer of Islam on top of that, and all of this mixed in. So I guess it's those two parts I'm just dancing with, and I guess it might be a perpetual dance. I'll be like, every so often I'll be like, maybe I should go to midwifery school.
I have a really good French midwife for you to chat with, called Kim Pompeiran Mizrahi. So she's raised French mum, Egyptian dad, raised in the States, back in France. She's very French, even though she was in the States a long time. You'd never know if she was in the States. And I met her, she'd just spent 3 months walking down from her home with a tiny rucksack, a leather hat and a staff and some boots. She was walking down through the Pyrenees to work out whether she wanted to continue being a midwife, but with no papers, because she couldn't continue with papers anymore. So she's your woman. I won't tell you how it ends. I'll let you find out. And I've just hooked her up with this other incredible French woman called Magali. If you come across her, she has podcasts and
yes, I've listened to her podcast. To her podcast with you actually.
There you go.
And I've now decided to wear a headscarf. I was just like, I was like, yes, that's true. My head needs to be protected.
That's right, from everyone's vibes. That's what we were talking about. I'd forgotten, hadn't I? In the Sikh tradition, right? That's what's going on in many traditions too. Well, Lina, thank you so much for coming and sharing your story. I'm so delighted that we got to do it, and we've got it here recorded for posterity's sake as well. And
thank you for the opportunity. And I chose Jenny. I thought it'd be nice to donate to Jenny because her work is so amazing, and because we didn't learn about. And she's the first Black-owned. She has the first Black-owned midwifery school in America.
So we need to give her all our money and find other ways. Maybe we could have a fundraiser for her. Let's have a fundraiser. Everyone.
Yeah, we should, because these are mad expensive. Like I looked at how much it costs for every little thing, because I was thinking about my fees when I was thinking about this whole thing, which is another reason why I just thought it would be good to support her students. So they have a scholarship fund for their students, and it's crazy the amount of money they have to spend on books and per semester and registration, and Black midwives are so needed.
Maybe America. Then we could, why don't we speak to Jenny and see if we could sponsor a midwife, right? And we all gather that money together, and we people here can be the moany people that like whine at everyone all through the year to give us some money. Wouldn't that be wonderful to help like take the pressure off for one person for their fees? There's loads of us. Surely we can manage that.
I'd so love to get involved in that. I spent my entire life organising events for people and doing things. We didn't do the film one, but we need to, if that's a thing, count me in. I'll try and help and do something. And Bristol's a good location as well. So.
Fantastic. Well, Lina, we're going to let you go unless there's any last quick thoughts or questions from anyone.
It just feels like there should be a part 2 at some point. We need to.
Oh my God, I know.
There's so much.
Yes, and about the football, a part 2 with the football.
There must be so much in there. Just amazing. Thank you. Sorry, I've got kids everywhere.
Yeah, that's right. We don't even know you're a goalie or in a choir.
I tell you,
It's like so much more. So
Flipping
much more. You're
Yeah.
The
wonderful.
baby, catch the football.
You're wonderful. I'm so
Thanks,
happy.
Thank you.
Really am. Thank you. Have a lovely weekend, everybody, and we'll see each other soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye now. I love you so
Bye.
much.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Everyone.